All right, it says we're live. We'll go ahead and give it a start here, like we always do. Do my standard beginning. Hello, hi, how are you, folks? Welcome to another podcast by George. We're going to talk a little bit to let people join the broadcast because this one is live and it's because of everything that's going on, the big news with COVID in the White House. You know, we were going to have our good friend, our political analyst, Dr. Stephen W. Schmidt, back on the podcast to do kind of a wrap on the debate anyway. And, there wasn't any great urgency with that. Everybody's talking about it. The ethersphere is full of chatter. But my God, Donald Trump comes down with COVID. So does his wife. So does the White House staff. I mean, it's going through the White House right now. And so what does that mean for Donald Trump, and what does it politically, and what does it mean for the rest of us as far as the nation is concerned? Let's welcome in our good friend, Dr. Schmidt. Doc, welcome to a podcast by George.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And hello to all of you folks who are watching, and we're grateful for your participation in this.
Yeah, there's a chat function here. If folks want to weigh in, ask a question here, feel free to do that. I'll try to get that to the doc. And, we've talked on the podcast before, Doc, you and I are getting to be pretty old boys. And what the old guys do when something like this happens is they kind of think of the past. And, I can remember the JFK assassination. I remember the transfer of power when a president was killed on the Air Force One on the tarmac there in Dallas, Texas. And my God, nobody that was alive or old enough to remember that will ever forget. I mean, Jackie Kennedy with her husband's brains literally still on her dress, taking, standing there next to Bobby Kennedy while LBJ took the oath of office. And he wanted to get the hell out of Dodge, by the way, because LBJ did not know what was going on. And most of the nation.
Nobody did.
Yeah. I mean, what was this, a coup d'etat? Yeah. I mean, Johnson did know. Yeah, he knew Dallas was probably not the place to be, and they put the casket in the back of the plane and got the hell back to D.C. as fast as they possibly could. Doc, we've never talked about that. Where were you at? What's your remembrances of that day?
Oh, I remember it very clearly because, it was a huge event. It was traumatic. It was just like 9/11, where, again, we didn't know what was going on in 9/11. And even though it didn't involve an actual incident with a president, remember, they took George W. Bush and they flew him immediately to a secure underground bunker and separated him from the vice president, who was also put in protection, because they grounded every airplane in the United States. Now tell me that wasn't dramatic. And of course, I remember Ronald Reagan getting shot, at the Hilton Hotel out in front of the Hilton in Washington, D.C., where I've attended many, many meetings. I know the place like my own home. And to see that and then see him taken off to the hospital, was another shocker. And so you're right. This is not unprecedented. I imagine that when Lincoln was shot, a lot of people really, really sweated it. And this, of course, is just a flu. It's just a flu. The coronavirus, most people, they get it and they recover from it. They have some symptoms, and some get really sick and some die. And if you're the age of President Trump and you have several conditions that might, weaken your system, apparently I saw this morning that if you're in that age bracket of President Trump, there's a 10% chance that this is going to be very serious, much more so than younger people, where we know that children, amazingly, young children are practically protected from their own immune system because they're young and they haven't had any major infections or viruses. And so their immune system is on high alert for anything that intrudes. And that's why young children, the younger they are, don't get it as much. But when you're President Trump's age, it becomes a problem. And as you said, it's not just President Trump. It's his wife. It's also the chairwoman of the National Democratic Committee, who apparently got it and didn't tell anybody. All these people were with Trump at several events, and she never told anyone. She flew back to Michigan, I think. And when Trump said, "I got it," they had to tell that she got it. Utah Senator Mike Lee got it. and he was standing next to the Supreme Court nominee within 2 feet of her. I have a picture. I can show you the picture right here. And so White House staff, we know that the Secret Service has had a real big problem at their training center with catching COVID. So it's widespread. Fortunately, we haven't seen casualties in that group so far, at least. But it's quite frightening when the president of the United States, comes down with it and has some mild symptoms. We don't know where that's going to go. The thing that shocks me the most is that there's so little confidence in politics nowadays that a lot of people are saying, I don't believe that he has it. He is trying to dodge out of the debates.
I know.
Because even though he says he won the first debate, the backlash and the blowback to that debate to President Trump for his disruptiveness has been incredible, even among Republicans. And so a lot of people are saying, and I've seen it posted, I've had people tell me, on various media, he's just faking it. He wants to drop out of the debates without dropping out and saying, well, they won't let me do it because, they're a bunch of fake news people, but I've got to do it, so I can't debate. And when he recovers, because if he doesn't have it, obviously he'll recover because he doesn't have it. He'll say, look, you see how strong I am? I may be an old guy, but my immune system is perfect. You don't have to worry about me. I am the Messiah. And I don't buy into that. I want to know that the doctor in the White House, the staff in the White House, and the president himself are serious enough not to play that kind of a game. In other words, I have to believe that he has tested positive, and we'll see where that goes.
And the QAnon guys, they're out there in particular with these crazy conspiracy theories. And use some common sense, folks. I mean, think about it. Donald Trump has staked his entire political career as being the adversary to media and medicine and the COVID virus and all that type of thing. Do you really think that he would use this as a means to fake his way into the presidency? I mean, because this, to me, you can look at this and say, well, God, Trump was wrong. I mean, he was wrong about this coronavirus. He got it. So I look at it. Maybe some other people look at it this way. Hopefully so. Maybe if he was wrong about that, something that big that he'd staked so much on in his presidency, what else might he be wrong about? Could he be wrong about climate change, as an example? Because a lot of these people that don't, and a lot of people believe that it was a hoax, the coronavirus. They also believe that climate change is a hoax. Well, if there's anybody that knows about the orderly process for somebody taking over even temporarily, and we want to, in the doc state, I mean, the likelihood that Trump is going to even get real sick isn't real good. It's in that 10% range. The likelihood that he'll die, for God's sake, pardon the thought, is like 3%. So it's not likely to happen. But, you mentioned Reagan when he got shot. John Hinckley Jr. capped 6 shots in his ass, and fortunately the one that hit Reagan was a ricochet from a .22. I always thought that was proof that the guy was insane. Anybody that would go hunting the president with a .22, that's what Hinckley did to impress Jodie Foster of all things. But unfortunately, it's not like it can't be lethal, because it was for James Brady almost, because one of the shots hit him in the head. And matter of fact, when Brady finally died, it was ruled a homicide because of Hinckley's shot. Hinckley got out of jail, by the way. He's living with his mom. That happened about 4 years ago. But Doc, take us back, because you'll remember, and I do too. They rushed Reagan to the hospital. The vice president wasn't available or something like that. Alexander Haig, the chief of staff, where was he? The head of the military guys. Anyway, he got to the podium and said, "I'm in control here," on national television. While everybody was wondering what was going on. And he was kind of an odd duck anyway. And everybody knew that he was a military guy. And again, people looked at this and thought, what's happening here? This coup thing always comes into play. Is this the military taking over? What is this? Yes. No, in the case of Alexander Haig, the fear, we were at a very hot point in our relations with the Soviet Union. It was, very dangerous to think
that the United States suddenly had no one with the nuclear button and, you know, the whole defense against a Russian threat, and that mutually assured destruction, which meant the Russians would never launch anything against us because they knew we would launch and destroy them, would suddenly be weakened and we would be vulnerable, which is why Alexander Haig sort of temporarily improvised there. It was kind of an improv situation. But in a situation where the president is actually disabled, it's a very orderly process in a sense. The cabinet decides that the president is temporarily unable to exercise the office. The vice president then becomes acting president until the president recovers. And obviously, if the president passes away, the vice president is immediately sworn in as president so that there is a seamless, basically, command at the top. And I don't see any problem whatsoever because the vice president and his spouse apparently have tested negative. The conspiracy people said, oh, that's not true. He's been hanging out with Trump and all these other people, Mike Lee and, you know, the chair of the Democratic National Committee. He's got it, but they have to say that he doesn't have it so he can be sworn in real quickly and assume the office. Well, I don't know, you know, what reality is. Nowadays, everybody lies. But the Vice President Pence, could easily assume the office temporarily. And if the president recovers, then, you know, then we move on. I don't see it as a constitutional crisis. And this is not like somebody getting shot or something like that.
Right.
There is plenty of time to prepare in case the president becomes seriously disabled, okay? There's plenty of time. And I think there are responsible people in both parties. The Republicans have been very afraid of President Trump, but I think in this moment and after the debate especially, a lot of Republicans are anxious to calm the country down and try to recover from the debate, which his supporters loved the debate and loved his performance, but the rest of the country is a little bit put off by it.
Yeah.
And so, well, you know, my own view, can I just say this right now, George?
Yeah.
There is a lot of BS out there about the debate. Oh, it was terrible. It was the worst debate in American history. Oh, we got to cancel the debate. Oh, we got to turn off microphones. You know what? It was a great debate because Americans got to see both President Trump and Joe Biden as they really are.
Right.
If Donald Trump had been quiet and respectful of the debate rules and not interrupted and not attacked Biden and so on, that would have been fake because that's not President Trump. What you saw was President Trump. And if you like that, you got the reality there. If you didn't like it, well, you know, then you said, oh, wasn't that awful? But I thought the debate, it's not a debate anyway. Those things are not really debates.
Correct.
You know, they're kind of moderated panels. You know, we have those at Iowa State all the time where we have like 2 or 3 or 4 people, and there is somebody. I moderated a wonderful panel for 4 of the top national political reporters one time that was sponsored by Kent Lucan and the Lucan Foundation. And, you know, you answer questions, ask questions, you interrupt each other a little, and that's a panel. A debate is something completely different. So we haven't really had any debates for years. We shouldn't call them that.
What I put on Twitter, everybody has their moments. Maybe this was my Twitter moment. I said, if that was a debate, kindergarten recess is a UN meeting. I mean, honest to God, that was not anywhere near a debate. Well, you know,
but it was reality. It was reality, George.
It revealed what these people are, exactly like you said, and it was good for that. And it's why open disclosure, public debates are always good. It revealed Trump for being somebody that's belligerent, overbearing, doesn't care about rules, wants to control situations. His followers actually like that about the man. Joe Biden, to me, on the other hand, he looked like someone that was a little slow of foot mentally, who did not have the ability to come back at Trump like he should have. He looked like, in boxing analogies, looked like a fighter with a glass jaw to me, to a certain respect. People, myself included, sat there and say, my God, why doesn't he say this? Why doesn't he do this?
Yeah.
Why doesn't,
Yeah.
well, he may do those things, but he's not going to, at his age, be able to do them like that, folks. And I think you saw that during the debate. And that was my primary concern. His rejoinders, his responses, his handling of that situation was not exactly good. And the one thing I will say now, the conspiracies are out there. We're going to see all kinds of nutty stuff here coming up, as the doc mentioned. I'll give you one conspiracy that I'm a believer in. And I don't think it's a conspiracy. And Doc's heard me talk about this before, the 2020 world that we live in, the fact that we can all be dead because of a nuclear launch accident in 20 minutes. The president of the United States, as his sole domain, has the launch codes. You've heard people talk about this. He has the ability to control our nuclear arsenal. That rests not with Congress, not with the Supreme Court. That rests with the president of the United States. Trump still has that. He's got the coronavirus. What's one of the symptoms of coronavirus? High fevers, deliriums. High fevers, deliriums? The guy that's got the launch codes, that scares me a little bit. Doc, do you know, are there any built-in fail safes? Are there any protections against a guy like Trump doing something nuttier than normal because he's ill?
I heard that there are several people in the White House who have grabbed the football, which is a briefcase with the launch code, and have hidden it away so that if you're delirious and have a fever and your toes have turned purple and all the other things that coronavirus does, and you start looking for the football to launch missiles at North Korea or whatever, you're not going to find it because it's been, stashed away somewhere. Maybe in that little cubicle where Bill Clinton had so much fun with an intern. But, the reality is that I have a feeling that there are a lot of people who worry that the president, might misinterpret something or might deliberately want to trigger a crisis with who will intervene. And that's just, I couldn't go to sleep. I didn't believe that. And our viewers and people who are participating in the station, they should believe me and not you, George, because otherwise they won't be able to sleep tonight.
Yeah, I didn't mean to scare people unnecessarily. These things keep me awake at night. We had a little internet freeze there, and hopefully I've done a little adjustment there by closing my Facebook browser window where I was seeing that we were live. Maybe that'll help a little bit to keep the stream going steady. Well, let's talk about really why I wanted to have you on, which was the political ramifications of this. Okay, so you can look at this and say Trump's going to be compromised. People are going to believe he's ill. They're going to believe he's weak. They're going to believe that he was wrong about COVID, and they're not going to vote or support him. The other side of the coin is people might think sympathy for him. I mean, we need to rally behind him. I mean, I was thinking about moving away from the guy, but he's sick, and it reminds me again. I go back to these instances like JFK as an example, and Reagan. They name all these airports and parks and all that stuff after these guys after they die. I mean, people really get kind of schmaltzy about these politicians. Do you think that'll have an impact and an effect? Will it hinder or help him?
Well, no, you just raised, the $1 million question, which is we are all guessing as to how different constituencies will respond. And what our friends who are viewing this and are participating in this discussion should remember is that there isn't just Democrats and Republicans. There are all kinds of subgroups, and there are independents, and there are Republicans who don't like Trump, and those who do, and passionate Republicans who love him beyond anything. The one thing that is probably going to have some impact is that he is not going to be able to go to large airport rallies the way he has been doing in the last few, days, really. And those have been, I think, important for him to keep the enthusiasm going on the Republican side. I think the one reaction that a lot of people may have is, oh boy, President Trump is basically disabled, or his effectiveness is reduced, and we get Mike Pence. There aren't as many Republicans and even independents who are as enthusiastic about Mike Pence. Donald Trump has something that is quite magical, really, in a sense. He is, people may not believe this, but he is charismatic to a lot of people. He has energy, he looks in their eyes, and he is defiant. And I heard a couple of people after the debate saying, oh yeah, man, that was great. And these were people, not academics. They said, you know, it was crazy, but you know, Trump was really strong. You know, he really just was strong like always, and they admired that in him. And so this kind of diminishes that strong, unless in a week or less he comes back even more strong than he is now, and he survives it. And then the idea is, see, he was right.
I think so.
This is just a flu. This is just a flu. And he got it. He doesn't wear a mask. He made fun of Biden because he wears the biggest black mask in history over his face all the time. And it will prove Trump right if he and Melania and Mike Lee and others survive it and are not really impaired by it. So in that sense, it could help. We still have 4 weeks left, so anything can happen. But this is kind of an October surprise, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah, and it's kind of bizarre. This is our October surprise, but there could very well be another one. And again, want to reemphasize what the doc is talking about. The odds, the percentages are really on Trump's side, that he won't get very sick at all, and he's certainly not going to die from this. I mean, the percentages are that he will do. So you got to look at it that way, that he may recover from this, and he may recover from it quickly enough to say, see, I told you it was no big deal. Go on with your life. I'm going to turn out. I'm going to do some last minute rallies here, and people will flood to support him. I could see that very easily happening.
I think that could easily happen, you know, and the Democrats have to be very careful. And a lot of liberals and progressives and others have just jumped on the internet and trashed Trump and said how happy they are and how they hope he'll die. The Democrats need to stay away from that in their official campaigns, at least, because, you know, I mean, no matter how much you don't like Trump, let's stay at a certain level of civilized behavior here. And so it's going to be a little bit difficult for the Democrats to continue the campaign as well. Trump has said he's not going to agree to any rule changes in the debates if there are 2 more debates. And so people are saying, see, he number one, doesn't want to debate anymore. And if there are debates, he's not going to debate because he says, that's not the contract I signed, you know, shutting off my microphone or putting me in a cone of silence, you know, whatever to keep me quiet. I'm not going to agree to that. So we'll see what happens in terms of the campaigning. I see that Joe Biden is going out more the way Trump did, going out and meeting groups. He had a train campaign, whistle stop, they call it, tour of Pennsylvania, which was very traditional. You know, candidates in the past, before airlines and stuff, always did it on a train. And the last wagon of the train has a little platform where it's like a stage where they can stand and talk to the crowd. And it's kind of a nice historical sort of campaigning memory there. And Biden wants people to think about that. So maybe he'll get more attention now as he goes out and campaigns and there are actual crowds there. Or maybe he'll catch the virus because he was on a stage with Trump.
12 feet away, I think was the measurement. Yeah, 12 feet. In fact, I'm going to have Dr. Andrew Nish on later today, and I'm going to ask him about that specifically in a room that large without many people around, but only 12 feet away with the way that Trump was carrying on with all that ranting and raving and all that stuff. I mean, I got a feeling that Biden was at risk, but that idea of a train whistle stop is great. And I just wished either one or both of the candidates would fund Amtrak because I love them. And the other thing about it is Pence is willing and waiting to in the wings, not only to ascend or assume to temporary control of our government, he's completely capable of campaigning very effectively, maybe better than Donald Trump on Trump's behalf. Not on his own behalf, although that might be what happens in 4 years or whatever. But that dude is a good campaigner. And I'll tell you this, having been in a few dust-ups and bars when I was a kid and having played hockey, it's not the loudmouth that deserves to have his ass slapped around that you need to keep your eye on. It ain't the big mouth guy. Out of the corner of your eye, you've always got to keep your eye on the quiet guy off to the side. That's the danger. That, to me, I look at Mike Pence and I keep thinking, that's that guy. That's the guy that you got to keep your eye on, and we may get to see him come to the fore here in the next couple of 3 weeks if Trump is too ill to campaign.
Well, the other thing is that Pence has the vice presidential debate coming up too, so we'll see how he does there.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us. The likelihood of Nancy Pelosi taking the reins of government if Pence and Trump both become incapacitated. Some people have talked about that, but boy, that's pretty remote, wouldn't you say?
No, pretty remote. Yeah, pretty remote.
Not likely.
And if I were Nancy Pelosi, if it got to that point, I'd go hide somewhere.
Well, I'm not a big Pelosi fan. So, yeah, well, I definitely agree with you on that count. Well, that's great, Doc. I appreciate you coming on short notice here. But like we said at the other podcast that we just did, I started it off by saying we could do one of these every day. And honest to God, now with only a month left with a sprint to the finish line between now and November 3rd, we almost could do one of these things every single day. And we'll come back and revisit this here with you very shortly. Anything in closing that you want to say here as we finish our live stream today for podcast?
I am going to be very curious as to how many other people suddenly get it, because Hope Hicks apparently has it. We don't know if she infected the president because she's very close advisor to him in the White House. There were tons of people who met with Trump for all kinds of different meetings. And Dr. Fauci told me that 2 weeks is the period. He told me on TV this morning, 2 weeks, you get it and you're infected until it starts showing positively. So President Trump could have been having this thing for 2 weeks and infecting all kinds of people. It's just a disaster. And this virus is really a terrorist organization or organism that sneaks up on us, and it's hard to protect from it. Wearing masks is a good idea. Washing your hands is a good idea, and keeping the social distance is a good idea. But it sneaks up on us, and I'm just wondering how many more people in this administration and people who visited with President Trump. What about the rallies? Were there people there, organizers, for example, and others? I know that he was far away from the crowds at these airport events, but there were organizers who presumably came and did a mic check and, fiddled with the podium and were maybe close to him, or maybe they infected him, I mean, we don't know. And they're not doing any social tracing, any
contact tracing,
contact tracing, right. So I'm curious to see in the next week who else comes down with it and whether it's really serious or not. But it's really a terrible thing to be having to worry about these things on top of all the other stuff that's happening. The unemployment in the airline industry is massive, horribly tragic, because it has not for the industry, but all the support. So it is a moment. We're all very highly stressed. So hopefully next week we can do something happy and positive.
Wouldn't it be nice? But it just isn't turning out that way. I mean, I can't remember the last time I just sat down on the podcast and did something for giggles. It's just been a hell of a long time. And again, kind of
Right.
scared the bejabbers
Right.
out of myself, even talking about the conspiracy idea with the launch codes. I'll close with this. And this is scary too. COVID is moving into the White House. The president had told
Yeah.
us that it was not a threat, that very few people got it, and it was almost over with. That at his last campaign stop, he talked about that. Now it's sweeping through the White House. I'll say this in closing. Also, what people, you've got to factor this in. This is a low point. We are overall in the world, maybe, but certainly in the United States, supposed to be in a low coming out of summertime here into the early fall. It's supposed to get worse. It's supposed to become more widespread, not less. So Trump was wrong. It is still alive. It's going to get him probably sick, I would say. How sick, we're going to have to find out. But the rest of us are all at risk unless we do what the doc talked about: social distance, wash your hands, wear masks, and maybe most importantly, when we get to these winter months in particular, stay home. I mean, it ain't going to kill you.
Flu
they
shot.
used to do it back. Yeah, well, get a flu shot. Yes,
Get
you don't
a
get
flu
both.
shot.
Yeah. Honest to God,
Yeah.
All right, Doc. That's going to do it. Thanks again. I really appreciate it, folks. That's Dr. Stephan W. Schmidt, the Lucan Endowed Professor of Political Science. This guy's got 50 years experience in the classroom teaching political science. He wrote the most widely distributed textbook in the history of college political science. It's right off to my left here. And he's seen it all. And going back to the JFK assassination and the attempt on Ronald Reagan's life that we talked about, and now with a president that's come down with COVID-19. Honest to God. That's all there is, folks. That's going to wrap it up. We'll be back with you again very soon. There ain't no more. That's another podcast by George.